It's the Sparkling Morning Show, the big talk of the morning. Let's talk Nigeria. And we are talking Nigeria this morning. We have Sir Leonard Anyogu. He's a member of the Chatham House, London. And before President Muhammadu Buhari became president, he was also at the Chatham House. So
not as a member.
I want to believe that, that Sir Leonard and Sir Buhari probably have a meeting point. I'm going to ask a question just in a moment. But let me tell Cross Riverians that the budget presentation is ongoing at the chambers of the Cross River State House of Assembly. And in a moment, we will, as soon as our signals are ready, we'll be hooking up to the live broadcast of the governor of Cross River State, Senator Ben Ayade. His budget presentation will be hooking up any moment from now. But it's still Let's Talk Nigeria. Ambassador Leonard Anyogu, Sir. Leonard Anyogu is still here.
I'm a chief too, but
Oh,
I don't like
chief, I will add it. I will add it. You see, but importantly, now the Chatham House, how does it work in matters that affect countries like this? Especially when we talk about the Nigerian nation is drifting, the judiciary is nothing for people to have hopes on. From all of the incidents that are happening, the judgments that are coming through, some of the judgments have come, even bail applications delivered by courts. Bills have been granted by courts and the executive is not respecting it. And some civil society groups are beginning to react. And what do you think this will lead to, and how do we ameliorate such situations?
Well, basically at the Chatham House, there's a global institute, a Royal Institute, that engage in policy formulation and analysis. Basically, you've seen heads of government coming into Chatham House, and there's a robust engagement. You need to tell us your policy statement, how you govern and all that. But interestingly, and surprisingly too, there are very few heads of government from the African continent that actually participate, that come to the house and or allowed to be engaged. That goes to tell us that a typical African leader don't want any engagement of whatsoever, and that's the challenge. I tell you, I had a session with the former president of Colombia, the immediate past president of Colombia, President Santos, and it was a robust engagement. It was a roundtable discussion where ideas were cross-fertilized, and we asked him how he was able to govern the country with so much crisis. Colombia is one country that has so much security challenges.
With all the cartels.
Yes, but very, very unfortunate that in the African continent, if you want to engage your leader, it will seem that it seems as if you want to terrorize him. He's so scared of engagement with the citizens. And that's the challenge we have as a continent, where because we are in a leadership position, you don't want any engagement whatsoever. And it's quite challenging, I tell you. But I'm sure that moving forward, it will be very difficult for any leader in Africa that wants to dictate to the people. Because no matter all the kind of anti-social bills you pass, you cannot gag the people eventually. They will always say something. Even a dying man will always cry out.
Depending on if he's been heard.
There's a natural consequence of a nature that even when you want somebody, even when you are killing somebody, the last threat will cry out. So we must change our mentality as a continent in Africa that allows engagement. I think that's the basic work. I'm using this word engagement. In other climes, there's engagement between the citizens and the government. But here, government just sees themselves as the highest level of authority and wisdom. You need to listen to the people so that you can draw policy statement and formulate. That's what basically Chatham House is all about.
Now, when I hear engagement, I remember Ronald Reagan, who was dealing with the Contra rebels in Nicaragua, and said, and he was supplying arms to persons that were killing their people, and he said the engagement was constructive.
Constructive engagement, subject to definition.
Now, but again, on a serious note, now let's see what your profession can do, because all eyes are on the legal profession now, whether as justices, whether as those on the bench, or those that are in general at the bar who are practicing. People are looking up to lawyers to say something. The civil society groups are all anchored on lawyers. Non-governmental organizations are all anchored on lawyers. Now, if lawyers throw their hands up, what window for this proverbial common man?
Well, I think with respect, and I think we have a couple of lawyers that have been very engaging. I don't want to assess myself, but I think some of us have gone beyond just the engagement. We've even gone on the street one or two occasions to drum the fact that a government needs to engage with its citizens. Having said that, the problem we have as a country is not just the executive arm controlling the other arms of government. We have a lot of psychophancy where a governor or a president want to be want praises without constructive criticism. What I mean is that as a governor, you want everybody to come and be praising you. As a president, you want all the praises. You don't want the other aspect. I keep telling persons that look, even in an organization where you have a particular employee that's always singing praises of that organization without looking of how to improve that organization, that person is a suspect. It's not growing that corporation, and that's what we have in this country, where everybody wants to sing praises so I can get the benefits. And I tell most persons that are in government that it is a tenure thing. After a while, you are going to leave governance, and then you are going to face the reality of it. If you want to be praised, I have a lot of friends in government. I do not go to them and start telling them you are doing excellently well. Neither do I tell them that you are doing below a par. But you need to engage and say, look, there's always room for improvement. And we need to have that consciousness and that reorientation that if you are an appointee or you are an elected person, it doesn't mean that you know it all. You need to engage with the citizens so that you can know the field and know exactly how to draw your policies to run the government.
Okay, now on the side of the people now, what can the people do? Now, we've talked about what lawyers can do, what the court, what lawyers can do, the reactions that we're getting. What can the people do? Because at the end of the day, the executive will say, the common man, we're doing it for my people. I mean, I'm sure the two candidates that contested the elections in Bayelsa State were doing that for their people.
In quote.
Those in Kogi State, Yaya Bello and the man from PDP, in their contest for their people. Smart Adeyemi and Dino Melaye for the Kogi West are also contesting for their people. In some other cases, my people, in quote, have asked me to run. I'm doing it in the interest of my people. These my people, what can they do in the face of all of these challenges?
Look, the solution to our human-made problem, especially in Nigeria, is to build a very strong institutions. Everybody can claim my people, in quote, but basically we need the people that are very engaging. That's why I said earlier that we have more sycophants, praise singers as a people, because the people get what they get the kind of leadership they actually produce. But the most important thing is this: as a people, we need to be interested in our government, in our governance. Why do I have to say this? We have seen a situation where once an election is over, the people just try to get what they can get, and that's what you call vote buying. You say, okay, after 4 years, the man is not coming again. So you just grab what you can grab, and then you just leave the man or the appointee or whoever that is elected. 4 years, he comes back to you and start giving you granite, sharing salt and all that. But we need to change that mentality. And I've been preaching this that look, we need a lot of good persons to come into politics. They say politics is dirty and it scares away people. And so those people that are there, they have entrenched themselves that if you are coming in, they will start giving you all sorts of malign you. And so a lot of good person in quote, they say, no, I don't want somebody to come and insult me. No, what is an insult? If somebody tells you things that are obviously not true, and then you want to, because that is the scare tactics they use, because they don't want you to come into the fold to sanitize the system, so they will scare you away. But we cannot continue to be like this. We need good persons to come into politics to engage the people, and otherwise the clique that we have that will continue to be in the position, because when you are coming, they will just scare you away. They will malign you, they will say all sorts of things just to scare you away and perpetuate themselves in power. But I know that there's a platform that will engage people, that good persons will start coming into politics. Because whether we like it or not, look, if you take your children to the best schools and they build them the best houses, they will still be absorbed by the society, where the large portion of the society are uneducated, are malnourished, How will their children fit into such a society? So that's why we need to collectively build this country called Nigeria.
Okay, still talking about Nigeria and the issues concerning the people. At every turn, it's the people that we say we are serving. Now, these people, as individuals, what can they do in the face of poverty, in the face of brigandage, and all of the vices that are ongoing? That's in one part. Now, secondly, in some of the pictures and that we saw during the last elections,
Especially in Kogi.
guns, James Bond style, and all. And we now have persons who are wearing uniforms and are dancing and are celebrating that same election. And all of these dancers, 90% of them are the same people, in quote. How do we reconcile that going forward?
Well, unfortunately, I think we are getting back to the Stone Age, where life was very short and brutish, and then the strongest man survives. Because if you are able to kill the other person, look at the image that is coming from Kogi State, where I think a particular woman leader was burnt to death. It's terrible. I was just looking at the picture shortly before I came to the studio. So, if you think that today you are in a position to oppress the other man and then take power from him, you know, nature has a way of cleansing itself. The table will turn. Look, I engaged a serving governor. Let me not call his name. I met him at the airport, and I engaged him. I said, look, Your Excellency, today you are in power. We were speaking in generic term. Today you are in power, and you think you can bring up obnoxious law to curtail your critics or the people that will engage you, and then you think you have survived that stage. There will be a time you are going to leave power. That same law that you passed will be used against you, and that is why people in developed climate, in a stable community,
what was the reaction of the?
No, I told him that, and it was a drawback. You know, when you are in power, you think that is endless, it's everlasting. You know, I said, look, this same law, bylaw, executive orders you are using today to say you want to coerce everybody to be online, the law will not disappear after your office. The same persons, the same law will be used against you. Simple. If you assume authority today, you just use the instrument of state of the state and oppress your opponent. And then I told him this democracy will be interesting when there will be opposing views. And that's the beauty when you look at the House of Lords and House of Commons in the UK, where the Prime Minister is on the other side and the opposition engaging. But we don't like engagement whatsoever in this country, and that is the challenge. And in a democracy, you don't expect everybody to toe your line. So we must be permissive to that extent.
Now, some persons have canvassed that for anybody to occupy an executive office, at the point at which they are all still candidates for an election, they should all go through from the point of being aspirants. Apart from having the security organizations, the DSS and the police and all, investigate these individuals, profile them and all that there should be medical profiling, especially in the area of psychiatry. With the way our leadership across board have been behaving, some persons think that there could be some elements that are missing or that have become crooked in the course of their rulership or governance, as it were, and that maybe some measure of mental instability could have crept in somewhere, and that they need some medical examination before contesting. Now, why he said so, because I engaged the individual, why he said so was, by the time this man becomes a candidate, now become governor, you can no longer begin to exercise that examination, because it becomes it will be seen as an attack to discredit the individual if it does not turn out to be favorable. The results. What do you make of it? Such a thought.
Well, I think I've heard that suggestion that police office holders should be subjected to medical tests.
No, not medical and physical.
Okay,
Psychiatric.
psychiatric test. Let me be most specific. Psychiatric test. But I think a bit differently. Why? Because we have a system that can make a very good person to become very autocratic. We have Nigerian president, for instance, is the most powerful president in the whole world. I'm telling you, even Donald Trump is not as powerful as that. And that's why he can be investigated. He's being tried. So, as a Nigerian president, you are the commander-in-chief of the armed forces and the chief executive of virtually everything. And so when you have the one, I'm the executive governor, for instance, the man who is the governor believes that, okay, they don't like executive governor, but that is the phrase they use. I'm the governor with executive powers. And so his executive powers extends not beyond the executive arm of government. He wants to go to the judiciary to control the judges and the chief judge. He wants to go to the House of Assembly to people become the speaker and dictate what the House of Assembly dictates at the state level and likewise at the national level. So when you have those kind of powers, you'll be power drunk. So we need to, because as far as I'm concerned, the major problem we have in this country is the executive arm of government. And that's why I don't envy to be a judge at this moment. Neither do I envy to be a parliamentarian. Because you can pass all the laws, you can make all the bills, and the man who is the executive governor or the president decide not to do anything, and there's nothing you can do about it because we have a system that favors the executive arm of government. He dictates, he controls the resources. Look, no matter how beautiful your ideas are in this country, if you don't have money, nobody wants to listen to you. And so the executive will deliberately starve the other arms of government and then make them beggarly. And that is why we have a situation where we are. The governor or the president, in my own opinion, in Nigeria, they are just too powerful as a human being. We must curtail these excesses. Look, today some of them that are governors and the president will be very, very comfortable. And in the next 2 or 3 years, they leave office. The next person comes in and use that same power against them. We cannot continue to be like this. We must build a viral institution, an institution that works. But because it favors you today, whatever anybody is saying, it doesn't care. You don't make any change. You don't want to make any effort. But when you are out, the same institution that is weak will be used against you. That is the challenge we have. So the executive arm of government in the Nigeria is overbearing. That is the challenge. And until we curtail that, we'll see.
How can we do that?
Yeah, we can do that simple because the legislation, look, one of those policies of this government that I was happy about, which has not come to fruition anyway, is to grant autonomy to the judiciary, for instance, and the legislative arm of government. You and I know that in a democracy is just about the parliament. The parliament ought to be the most powerful arm of government, where it can control both the executive and of course make laws for the judiciary. But the Nigerian parliament, with the greatest respect, it's a factor, especially this 9th assembly. You know, the 8th assembly, the 8th assembly at the national level was more of independence. But unfortunately, this 9th assembly seems to be anything the executive brings on board, they will want to toe the line. And that is why people are not very comfortable with the 9th assembly are presently constituted. Because they ought to know their powers, that they ought to act as checks and balances.
Is it that they don't know?
They know, but
because
look, they know, because if you see the way they emerge. That's why I said, what is the business of an executive governor, of a governor, or a president to be so concerned who becomes the leader of the Senate, or who becomes the president of the Senate, or the speaker in the House of Assembly? Because you want someone that you can control, and most times this is blind party loyalty. Look, I have been saying this, that after politics comes governance. But in this climate, we tend to believe that it is politics all through. You don't keep doing politics from when you are contesting and when you are in the office. When you are in the office, you now do governance, because politics ought to be a vehicle. It ought to be a vehicle, but we don't have that. So we have a system that allows the governor of the state or the president to be too overbearing. And then I keep engaging those of them I come across. I say, look, if you don't change the system, when you leave office, the same system will consume you. And that is why I was just smiling, let me not say smiling, I was just giggling that the former Attorney General, Adoke, was arrested in Dubai. Yes, you know, when he was in office, we had an engagement at a level that, like, we need to strengthen this institution. Once you leave office, the same institution will consume you.
So, as we begin to drive this to a close, one would think that because I got very worried when I went through the literature suggesting that we should that judges would no longer be accorded respect.
Please, so they have to be accorded respect because that is our last vestige. I'm sorry to cut you
I'm
that.
coming. It's not me now. I think that was my worry.
Yeah.
And that's why all of this discussion has centered more like the image of the judiciary. That's why we're talking about it, because persons are listening to us, young people are listening, lawyers are listening, other civil society organizations are listening. But these subjects have been broached. People are talking about it. In fact, this society have gone ahead to say this is their stand. And I'm saying this morning that in the light of this stand, what should we tell other groups in Nigeria? What messages should we send to the government, the executive, those in the legislature, and the judiciary itself? Can the judiciary call itself to order at the point at which we are at going forward?
Well, I think the solution to judicial independence is for it to have its own financial independence. When you are drawing from the consolidated funds, why don't you give the money to the judiciary? But the executive will don't want to do that, because if you have a judiciary that is independent, the executive will put itself in order. But since they don't want that to happen, they will start the judiciary of funds, because they know that the chief judge of a state or the chief justice of Nigeria will always come back. And when it comes to collect money, you are dictating to him. Look, I was amazed. I keep repeating that the chief justice of Nigeria said that he cannot be independent because he goes to the executive to collect funds. That was the chief justice of Nigeria making that statement. And so until that is cured, we may not.
Is it curable?
It's curable. Where we decide as a people that look, the money for the judiciary should be given to them from the onset, and that of the legislative arm. But we have a system that, look, they will tell that this is our time. Let us do as we want to do. When it is your turn, do what you want to do. That is the sickening aspect of our being as a country. Because the man that is there, he said, look, don't disturb me, don't put sand in my garri, in quote. It is my turn, and this is how I want it to be done. When it is your turn, wait. That's not how a government is run in other climes.
So how do you close?
I will close by saying that, look, good persons should come into governance. We should be more engaging, and the engagement has to be continuous. I think that's the best way, because if you get scared and good people are scared away from politics, it is the clique that will continue to perpetuate themselves. Look, to me at this stage, I don't longer see any difference between APC and PDP, because if it doesn't favor you here, you are going the other way. The same clique of persons. So we need new blood, new entrants, new people with idea and capacity to come into the fold. And until we do that, Nigeria will remain as it is.
All right, a big thank you to Sir Leonard Anyogo. He's a lawyer, a member of the Chatham House, London. That's why we are talking plenty of international politics. It's been Let's Talk Nigeria. Ifeoma is my name. Great pleasure having to discuss all of the issues surrounding Nigeria, especially when groups are beginning to react. Persons are beginning to say, no, we cannot be calling you your lordship, and you are sounding like a commoner. We cannot be calling you honorable, and you are acting and behaving very dishonorably. And persons are beginning to react. And we do not want anarchy or chaos in our society at all. And as such, we broached the subject. We expect that we'll continue to discuss it in your offices, in your homes. You take the table and lay it bare. Go to the bar and discuss. I don't mean the beer parlor, please. Don't misunderstand me. I mean, those at the bar. They know themselves. They should be able to discuss and lead so that the rest of the country will follow. That's the show this morning. Messi is still here. Let me also say, in the course of this morning's broadcast, as soon as we're able to link up with the State House of Assembly, we'll bring you excerpts of the presentation by the Governor of Cross River State, Senator Ben Ayade. Good morning.
All right, that's how we anchor this morning.